I never thought a simple envelope could unravel 63 years of sisterhood, but there it was, sitting on my kitchen counter in my modest home in Portland, Oregon. The invitation was embossed with gold lettering, announcing our family reunion scheduled for late September at a resort in the Columbia River Gorge. My name, Mia Henderson, was printed neatly alongside my sister Diane's, but as I read further, my chest tightened with an emotion I hadn't felt in decades. The morning light filtered through my kitchen window, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors I'd walked on for 30 years. I held the invitation with trembling hands, my reading glasses perched on my nose as I reread the words that seemed to burn into my vision. The reunion committee, led by my nephew Marcus, had designated Diane as the guest of honor for her recent retirement from a prestigious law firm. My own retirement from teaching elementary school 2 years prior hadn't warranted such recognition. I set the invitation down and walked to my living room, where photographs lined the mantel above the fireplace. Images of my 2 children, Emma and Jacob, smiled back at me from various stages of their lives. There were pictures of my late husband, Robert, who'd passed 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack. But as I scanned the collection, I noticed something that had become painfully familiar over the years. In every family photo where both Diane and I appeared, she was front and center, her striking features and confident smile dominating the frame, while I stood slightly behind, slightly to the side, always in her shadow. Diane had always been the golden child. Even now, at 63, she commanded attention wherever she went. Her silver hair was professionally styled, her wardrobe was designer, and her accomplishments were the stuff of family legend. She'd married a successful cardiothoracic surgeon, lived in a sprawling home in Seattle's Madison Park neighborhood, and had raised 3 children who'd all gone to Ivy League schools. Meanwhile, I'd lived a quieter life, teaching second graders their ABCs, raising my kids in a middle-class neighborhood, and finding joy in the simple pleasures of gardening and book club meetings. I shouldn't have been surprised by the invitation's focus on Diane. This had been the pattern our entire lives. When we were children growing up in Eugene, Oregon during the 60s, Diane had been the one who won the spelling bees and starred in school plays. I'd been the one who helped other kids with their homework and volunteered to organize the class parties. Our parents, both gone now for over a decade, had loved us equally, I believed, but their pride had always seemed to shine brightest when discussing Diane's achievements. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my daughter Emma, calling from her apartment in downtown Portland, where she worked as a graphic designer. "Mom, did you get the reunion invitation?" she asked, her voice tinged with excitement. "I did," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Isn't it wonderful? The resort looks beautiful, and I heard Uncle James is flying in from Boston with his whole family. It's been years since we've all been together." I wanted to share her enthusiasm, but the words stuck in my throat. "It'll be nice to see everyone," I managed. "Are you okay, Mom? You sound strange." I sighed, sinking into my worn armchair that Robert and I had bought at an estate sale 20 years ago. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just feeling a bit nostalgic, I suppose." But it wasn't nothing. As I hung up the phone, I realized that somewhere deep inside, I'd been hoping that this reunion might be different, that maybe just once I'd be recognized for something more than being Diane's younger sister. I'd spent 40 years shaping young minds, had volunteered countless hours at the food bank, had raised 2 kind and successful children on a teacher's salary after Robert's death, left me with modest life insurance and a mortgage. But none of that seemed to matter when compared to Diane's courtroom victories and society page appearances. The September air was already turning crisp in Portland, and as I looked out at my garden, where the last of the summer roses were blooming, I made a decision. I would go to this reunion with my head held high. I would celebrate Diane's retirement because that's what family does. And I would try, once again, to find my own place in the family narrative that had always seemed to be written with Diane as the protagonist and me as a supporting character. The day of the reunion arrived with the kind of perfect autumn weather that makes the Pacific Northwest legendary. The resort was nestled among towering Douglas firs, with views of the Columbia River that took my breath away. I'd driven up alone in my 12-year-old Honda Civic, having declined Emma's offer to ride together because I'd wanted time to prepare myself mentally for what lay ahead. The main lodge was decorated with banners featuring old family photos, and I couldn't help but notice that most of them prominently featured Diane. There she was at her law school graduation, at her wedding to Richard, at various charity galas and professional events. The few photos of me were from decades ago: my own modest wedding, my college graduation from Portland State University, a single picture of me receiving a Teacher of the Year award from my school district. The reunion officially kicked off with a cocktail hour on the terrace overlooking the gorge. I'd dressed carefully in a navy dress I'd bought on sale at Nordstrom Rack, paired with the pearl necklace Robert had given me on our 20th anniversary. As I walked through the crowd of cousins, aunts, uncles, and extended family members, I was greeted with warm hugs and the usual questions about my children and my retirement. Then Diane arrived, and it was as if someone had turned up the lights in the room. She wore a cream-colored designer pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly pension check, and her entrance was preceded by the news that she and Richard had just returned from a month-long Mediterranean cruise. The family surrounded her immediately, congratulating her on her retirement, asking about the cruise, admiring her obvious glow of health and prosperity. I stood at the edge of the circle, holding my glass of white wine, feeling invisible. My nephew Marcus clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. "Everyone, can I have your attention, please?" Marcus called out. At 35, he was Diane's oldest child, a successful tech entrepreneur who'd sold his startup for an amount of money I couldn't even fathom. I want to say a few words about why we're all here today. Yes, it's wonderful to have the whole Henderson family together, but we have a very special reason to celebrate. My mother, Diane Henderson Clark, has just retired after 40 years of groundbreaking legal work in environmental law. She's won cases that have protected thousands of acres of wilderness. She's argued before the state Supreme Court, and she's been a mentor to countless young attorneys. Mom, you're an inspiration to all of us, and we wanted to honor you today. The applause was thunderous. Diane beamed, giving a gracious speech about family being her greatest achievement, about how Richard and her children were her true success story. She was eloquent and charming, and I felt tears prick my eyes, not from joy, but from a sadness I'd carried for so long. It had become part of my identity. No one mentioned that I'd also had a 40-year career. No one acknowledged that teaching children to read, to think critically, to be kind human beings was work worth celebrating. I thought about the hundreds of students who'd passed through my classroom, many of whom still sent me cards or stopped me in grocery stores to tell me how much I'd meant to them. But here, in this moment, none of that seemed to matter. The evening continued with dinner in the lodge's grand dining room. The seating arrangement placed Diane at the head of the main table, surrounded by her immediate family and the most prominent relatives. I was seated at a side table with some second cousins I barely knew and an aunt who spent the entire meal talking about her recent hip replacement surgery. As dessert was being served, Marcus stood again, this time announcing that there would be a special video presentation after dinner showcasing highlights from Diane's career and life. I excused myself before the lights dimmed, claiming I needed to use the restroom, but really, I just needed air. I stood outside on a smaller terrace, away from the crowd, looking at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Not enjoying the party?" a voice asked behind me. I turned to find my younger brother, James, whom I hadn't had a chance to talk to yet. At 58, he was the baby of our family, a high school principal in Boston who'd always been the peacemaker among us siblings. "Just needed a moment," I said, forcing a smile. James came to stand beside me, his hands in his pockets. "She's really something, isn't she? Our big sister." "She really is," I agreed, and I meant it. Diane was accomplished and brilliant, and she deserved to be celebrated. The problem wasn't Diane's success, it was my invisibility in light of it. "You know, Mia," James said quietly, "you've always been the heart of this family. Diane might be the star, but you're the one who remembers everyone's birthdays, who calls to check on people when they're sick, who shows up with casseroles when someone dies. That matters too." His words were kind, but they only emphasized what I already knew. I was valued for being supportive, for being there, for being the background music while others danced in the spotlight. I was 63 years old, and I was tired of being invisible. The reunion continued through the next day with various activities: a family hike through the gorge trails, a group photo session, and a barbecue lunch by the river. Throughout it all, Diane remained the center of attention, holding court with stories of her cases, her travels, and her plans for retirement, which apparently included consulting work and possibly writing a book. I participated in the activities with a smile plastered on my face, but inside, I felt increasingly hollow. My children were wonderful, checking on me periodically, but they too were drawn into Diane's orbit, fascinated by their accomplished aunt and successful cousins. As the reunion wound down on Sunday afternoon, with families beginning to pack up and say their goodbyes, Marcus approached me in the lobby. His expression was uncomfortable, and he kept glancing toward where his mother was engaged in conversation with a group of relatives. "Aunt Mia, can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, his voice low. "Of course, dear," I said, wondering what could make my usually confident nephew seem so nervous. He led me to a quiet corner near the fireplace. "There's been a bit of a situation with the resort billing. When I booked this event, I put down a credit card for the deposit, but apparently there was an issue with the final payment processing. My card was declined for the balance, and I'm having some temporary cash flow issues with a business investment." I waited, sensing what was coming. "The resort is asking for payment before people check out, and I was wondering if you might be able to help. It's just temporary, of course. I'll pay you back as soon as I sort out the business thing. The balance is about $8,000. My heart sank. $8,000. That was more than 2 months of my pension. That was money I'd been saving for a new roof my house desperately needed. That was funds I'd set aside for emergencies in my retirement years. "Marcus, that's a lot of money," I said slowly. "I know, and I'm so sorry to ask. I've tried calling Dad, but he and Mom are already on their way to the airport for a flight to Los Angeles. My brothers are both tapped out from recent expenses. Uncle James would help, but his son's tuition payment just cleared. You're the only person I could think of who might be able to help the family out of this bind." I looked across the lobby at Diane, who was laughing at something Richard was saying, looking radiant and carefree. This entire reunion had been planned to honor her, and now I was being asked to pay for the celebration of her accomplishments while my own life's work had gone unacknowledged. But what choice did I have? If I said no, the whole family would be embarrassed. People had traveled from across the country. The resort would demand payment before anyone could leave. I would be the one who'd ruined the reunion by refusing to help. "I'll need to transfer money from my savings," I said quietly. "It'll take a few minutes to access my account." Marcus's relief was palpable. "Thank you so much, Aunt Mia. I promise I'll pay you back within the month. You're a lifesaver." I went to my room and sat on the bed, my laptop open to my bank account. The numbers glowed on the screen, representing years of careful budgeting, of choosing generic brands, of skipping vacations to build a modest cushion for my retirement. With a few clicks, I transferred $8,000 from my savings to my checking account, then went back down to the lobby to provide my credit card to the resort manager. The transaction went through. The reunion was saved, and nobody except Marcus and I knew anything about it. As families loaded their cars and said their final goodbyes, Diane pulled me into a hug. "Wasn't this wonderful, Mia? I'm so glad we could all be together. Marcus did such a beautiful job organizing everything." "Yes," I said, my voice flat. "He certainly did." I drove home alone as the sun set behind the Cascade Mountains, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my mind churning with emotions I could barely name. I'd spent my entire life being the good sister, the responsible one, the one who showed up and helped out and never made a fuss. And where had it gotten me? I'd just paid $8,000 for a party celebrating someone else, while my own contributions to the family had been completely overlooked. The weeks following the reunion were difficult. I tried to return to my normal routine, my morning walks around the neighborhood, my volunteer shifts at the food bank, my book club meetings, but something had fundamentally shifted inside me. I felt angry, and I wasn't used to feeling angry. Marcus had sent me a text the day after the reunion, thanking me again and promising repayment. But as days turned into weeks, there was no further communication about the money. I didn't want to be the person who had to ask for my own money back, but I needed it. The contractor I'd hired to inspect my roof had given me an estimate that I could no longer afford. Emma noticed the change in me during one of our regular coffee dates at a cafe near Powell's Books. She reached across the table and took my hand. "Mom, what's wrong? You've been different since the reunion. Did something happen?" I'd been holding it in for so long that when I finally told her the whole story, it poured out like water from a broken dam. I told her about feeling invisible my whole life, about the invitation that had triggered something in me, about paying for the entire reunion while Diane had been celebrated and I'd been forgotten, about Marcus's promise to repay me and his subsequent silence. Emma's face grew increasingly troubled as I spoke. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, stirring her latte thoughtfully. "Mom, why didn't you tell anyone what was happening? Why didn't you call me or Jacob?" "Because that's what I do," I said, my voice breaking. "I handle things. I don't make waves. I'm the one everyone can count on to be there, to help out, to keep the peace. But Emma, I'm tired. I'm 63 years old, and I'm tired of being invisible." "You're not invisible to me, Mom. You're not invisible to Jacob or to your grandkids or to the hundreds of students whose lives you changed. Aunt Diane's accomplishments are impressive, but they're not more valuable than yours. They're just louder." Her words hit me like a revelation. Louder. That was exactly it. Diane's life was louder, more visible, more celebrated by society's standards. But did that make it more meaningful? I thought about the letters I'd received over the years from former students who'd gone on to become teachers themselves because of my influence. "I need to talk to Marcus," I said. "And maybe to Diane too. I need to stop being invisible, even if it makes people uncomfortable." That evening, I called Marcus. When he answered, his voice was cheerful and casual, asking how I was doing, talking about his latest business venture. I let him talk for a moment, then interrupted. "Marcus, we need to discuss the money I lent you for the reunion. It's been almost a month, and I haven't heard anything about repayment." There was a pause. "Oh, right. I'm sorry, Aunt Mia. Things have been crazy. The business situation is taking longer to resolve than I thought. Would it be possible to wait another month or two?" "No," I said, surprised by the firmness in my own voice. "It wouldn't. Marcus, that money came from my savings. I have expenses I need to cover, and I can't afford to wait. I need a concrete plan for repayment, starting now." Another pause, longer this time. "I understand. Let me talk to my parents and my brothers. We'll figure something out." "Please do," I said. "And Marcus, I love this family, and I was happy to help when you asked, but I'm not a bank, and I'm not someone whose financial stability should be taken for granted because I live more modestly than others." After I hung up, my hands were shaking, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of my own worth, of my own voice, of my own right to be seen and heard. The next day, Diane called me. Marcus had clearly spoken to her. "Mia, I just heard about what happened with the reunion payment. I'm horrified that you were put in that position. Richard and I are wiring you the full amount today. This should never have been your burden." "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate that. But Mia, why didn't you say something at the time? Why didn't you tell me?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Diane, I love you. You're my sister, and I'm proud of everything you've accomplished. But I need you to understand something. For my entire life, I've lived in your shadow. At the reunion, I watched as you were celebrated and honored, which you deserved. But it hurt that nobody acknowledged that I'd also had a meaningful career, that I'd also contributed to this family. And then, to have to pay for the whole event, for a celebration of your life, while my own went unnoticed, it was more than I could handle silently." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Diane finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I had no idea you felt this way. I'm so sorry, Mia. You're right. You've always been there, always been supportive, and I've taken it for granted. Your work as a teacher, the way you raised your kids, the person you are, it's all remarkable. I'm sorry I haven't told you that enough." The conversation continued for nearly an hour. We talked about our childhood, about the patterns that had been established so long ago, about how we could do better as sisters. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a beginning. 2 days later, I received a wire transfer for $8,000 from Diane and Richard, along with a bouquet of flowers and a note that read, "To my sister Mia, who has always been my hero, even when I forgot to tell her." But more meaningful than the money or the flowers was the phone call I received from Marcus, who'd organized a family video conference. On the screen were faces of relatives from across the country. Marcus spoke first. "We wanted to do this properly. Aunt Mia, on behalf of the Henderson family, we want to honor you. We want to celebrate your 40 years of teaching, your dedication to your students, your work in the community, and most importantly, your role as the heart of this family. We were so focused on celebrating one person that we failed to see we had 2 extraordinary women to celebrate." Tears streamed down my face as, one by one, family members shared memories of ways I'd touched their lives. Cousins talked about how I'd helped them with school projects, how I'd sent care packages when they were in college. My children spoke about the sacrifices I'd made, the values I'd taught them, the strength I'd shown after their father died. When the call ended, I sat in my quiet living room, looking at the photographs on my mantle with new eyes. Yes, I'd lived a quieter life than Diane, but it had been a life of profound meaning and impact. I'd shaped hundreds of young minds. I'd raised 2 incredible children. I'd been a pillar of my community. I wasn't invisible. I never had been. I'd just been looking for validation in the wrong places, measuring my worth by someone else's yardstick. The following week, I hired the contractor to repair my roof. I joined a new community theater group. I started writing a memoir about my years in the classroom, and I made plans to visit my former students to reconnect with the people whose lives had intersected with mine in meaningful ways. At 63, I was finally learning to see myself clearly, not in comparison to anyone else, but as a person of inherent worth. The reunion had been painful, but it had also been a catalyst for change. Diane and I grew closer in the months that followed. She started coming to Portland more often, and we'd meet for lunch or walks. Our relationship became more equal, more honest, more real. She told me about the pressures she'd felt her whole life to be perfect. I told her about the loneliness of being overlooked. We were 2 women, sisters finally learning to see each other truly, and in that seeing, we both found healing. The family reunion had stolen my spotlight in the moment, but it had ultimately given me something far more valuable: the courage to claim my own light, to stand in my own truth, and to know, finally and completely, that I had always been enough.